especially since no data are being shared with us. And I feel Ritenour has already failed me time and time again over my life. I'm not advocating for me when I was diagnosed with problems. Walking my daughter outside in freezing weather when she was trying to get in her classroom, which was a trailer, and no one would answer the door for over 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So she decided to run home. Imagine seeing a fourth grader running home and scared to death in freezing weather with no coat, and the school had not even realized she was missing. So I don't have much faith in the district when it comes to making safety or health decisions for my children, and I have some numbers here I'd like to share to show the risk for school-age children is minuscule. They have more than a 99.5% survival rate. There have only been 5 school-age children die in the whole state of Missouri, ages 0 to 17, through August, out of 67,854 cases. And we know at least one of them had underlying conditions. These numbers are from the Missouri Health Department dashboard. And then I'd also like to point out that Title 21 of Section 360BB of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act states individuals have the option to accept or refuse emergency use authorization products, including tests, masks, and vaccines. They're experimental and thus require the right to refuse. St. Louis County has again voted down a mask mandate, and lots of private schools or surrounding county schools are allowing masks to be optional. I think parents would make the right choices for their children. Some people can't wear masks for a long periods of time due to medical conditions like me. You'll notice I have a shield on tonight. I have always had TMJD, very bad, even in high school. And when I would try to comply and wear a mask, it would make the pain unbearable. To the point I had to have bilateral jaw surgery in June. And most people don't know that TMJ is an exclusion from most insurance companies. And Missouri will not mandate it for insurance to pay, even though it's considered medically necessary. So I had to pay 100% out of pocket for this procedure. It got to a point I couldn't eat, talk, yawn, or even sit still without excruciating pain. That surgery was just to buy time. So I'm still not willing to wear a mask and waste the thousands of dollars I spent and mess that up. And don't believe students who suffer with the same problem should make it much worse at a young age. My daughter was also recommended for speech therapy last year. However, after how poorly that went, I'm not confident they will be able to do that with masks. You need to be able to see how mouths move for that to be successful. Not to mention they're uncomfortable, cause young kids to touch their face more, and they hide their beautiful smiles. I also have some serious concerns and questions over the divisive quarantine policy, especially from a school that's mission statement talks about enabling critical thinking in a diverse, supportive environment. What's going to happen when a key player for a sports team must quarantine because they're not vaccinated? Are their teammates going to be disappointed with their vaccination status, even though it's not that student's fault? Why do vaccinated students only have to take a test when there have been plenty of news stories that say vaccinated people can still spread the virus? Because you could go, and is there a specific test that has to be taken? Because you can go to FDA.gov and quickly find a list that should no longer be distributed, and there are currently 290 on it, and more being added all the time. Finally, I think it's ridiculous that parents aren't allowed to change their mind now that the rules have been released. I know we were warned of that, but that was in April when we were all hopeful mandates were being released and that people were being vaccinated. Even concert venues now are letting people get their money back, and we can't make a change for children when we're talking about their education and their mental health and social well-being.
Thank you so much for commenting. It's okay. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you for your time.
Okay. I'm glad you're here. Can we get a copy of her letter, please?
This is my speech. I just didn't think I could remember it all.
No, that's fine.
And I actually have a PowerPoint with all of my resources that I could email.
Great. I'm glad to hear you. Next, we have Julie Coleman.
Coleman. I am an EL teacher at Blue Elementary. Thank you for allowing me to speak today before all of you. I'm here to say that masks should be optional for all students and staff. There's been a lot of debate on this topic, mask, no mask, mask mandate, no mandate. But one thing we can all agree on is health, right? That's the goal. The point in all of this is to stay healthy. I keep hearing buzzwords and phrases about health, such as stay healthy when people end a conversation. However, when I think about masks, I do not think about health. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Health to me is breathing in oxygen, not my own carbon dioxide, taking vitamins, eating healthy foods, and exercising. But having a mask strapped to my face all day long is not my definition of health. If people think that's healthy for them, then that's fine. They can wear a mask. But please don't tell me that I need to. I know what my body needs to stay healthy, and it's not a mask. Talking all day with a mask on is exhausting. Having to do morning, lunch, recess, and dismissal duty where I'm speaking in a large room with a lot of students is extremely difficult with a mask on. And I have to say that most students' masks that I see are extremely grotesque. Many students do not wash their masks and reuse the same ones over and over. Again, this is not healthy. The masks turn into petri dishes. Keep preaching about germs. Wash your hands to get rid of germs. Wipe out the dust to get rid of germs. But yet so many are okay with germs being strapped to their faces. There was a group of parents who had their children's masks sent to a lab for testing after wearing for only one day. The results were astounding. They found 11 types of pathogens on the mask, such as pneumonia, meningitis, and pathogens that can cause fever, ulcers, acne, yeast infections, strep throat, and more. So again, if that's healthy for you, then wear a mask. Please don't ask those of us who see health in a different way to do so. Allow us to make healthy choices for ourselves. Trust us to stay healthy in the best way that's best for our bodies. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach because wearing a mask makes me feel ill. And if I'm not performing at my best, I end up getting sick anyways. What good does it do anyone? The premise behind masking is that asymptomatic people can spread the virus without knowing. However, there have been studies done that show asymptomatic carriers do not have the viral load to spread it. And here's a little summary from one of the studies. Compared with symptomatic patients, asymptomatic infected persons generally have low quantity of viral loads and a short duration of viral shedding, which decrease the transmission risk of SARS-CoV-2. In the present study, virus culture was carried out on samples from asymptomatic positive cases and found no viable SARS-CoV-2 virus. All close contacts of the asymptomatic positive cases tested negative, indicating that the asymptomatic positive cases detected in the study were unlikely to be infectious. So please tell me, how am I spreading something that I don't even have? Let us make our own healthy choices. I also want to talk on behalf of students who do not have a voice in this. Students deserve a safe and comfortable environment to learn in. Requiring them to wear a mask all day is detrimental. Again, they are wearing filthy masks. They have to battle masks that are too large for them and constantly adjusting. They have to endure teachers who are scaring them by telling them they are spreading germs if they don't wear a mask over their nose. This is not fair. When did breathing become so political and illegal? These are little children that we are supposed to be taking care of, but I cannot see how it is happening. We are instilling fear in them that germs are bad and unhealthy. Now imagine being an EL student who is new to the country and who is trying to learn a new language. They need practice. They need just practicing speaking English properly, but it is very hard to do when their face is being covered. How can they learn to speak a new language when native speakers are having a difficult time being understood themselves? So please do the right thing and let us have a choice, because you don't know everyone's story or what they are going through. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't have my name. Sorry, I my name or something.
I can put
Okay.
it over here.
Sorry.
That's
Yeah.
easy peasy. Thank you. No, thank you. Next we have Debbie Weister.
Thank you for letting me speak to you tonight. I'm going off script really quick because I thought of this on my drive here. And I just want to let you know I have a family of 4 children. School got out in May. It's August now. For 3 months, our family has not worn masks. I have to wear it at work. I'm a nurse. Totally get that. But we haven't worn masks. So I'm asking teachers and all of you to give kids grace who struggle on the first day of school and on the 3rd day of school and on the 10th day of school, getting used to wearing a mask again, because I know for my kids, that's going to be very difficult. And like Mrs. Coleman just said, They don't need teachers yelling at them or giving them a hard time because they're getting used to going back to wearing a mask when they haven't for 3 months. I spoke to you all in June asking for voluntary masking, and I'm here tonight with the same request. Masks cause fatigue, respiratory impairment, anxiety, headaches, and acne. Masks produce a warm, moist environment, and bacteria thrives in that environment. Masks actually put people at risk for infection. And I think I've shared studies with you all about these facts. I've sent an article to you. Where there is risk, there must be choice. Ritenour's Return to Learning plan, which announced mandatory masking of all staff and students this fall, failed to mention any community data driving the decision. If there is no data to support this decision, why are you forcing masks on my children? The plan did state local and national health officials state we need to protect the unvaccinated. Who are these health officials you speak of? I am most interested in what is best for my child and my community. I can name many local, national, and even international health officials who say masks cause more harm than good to any healthy person. I want to remind you that unvaccinated are those who have made a personal medical decision not to get vaccinated. The remaining unvaccinated are children ages 11 and under who still have over a 99% survival rate should they get sick. Do you realize what the district is asking and the illogical reason for it? You are forcing masks on healthy people. Parents should be the only ones making health choices for their children, not a superintendent, not a board member, and not a teacher. COVID will continue to exist as a virus, just like other dozens of viruses common in the US. Does Ritenour plan to keep staff and students masked indefinitely? We have to learn to live with COVID, like we've learned to live with influenza, pneumonia, strep throat, croup, RSV, and other common communicable illnesses. If you're truly concerned about the health of staff and students, wouldn't mandating exercise for at least 30 minutes a day or 5 times a week, wouldn't that be far more beneficial? Just think if during the past 18 months, that had been the consistent message communicated by the district, our community and schools would have gained so many health benefits that are long-lasting and life-saving. I know Heather said 5 kids in Missouri have died. I was only aware of 1. I did not do much digging. Regardless, 1 or 5, and that is tragic. However, kids die every year, every day. 1 has died that I was aware of, or 5, in the state of Missouri. Why are we suddenly terrified of a child getting sick? What has happened to our society? Kids get sick, then build up natural antibodies, and their bodies become warriors to fight off germs naturally. There is no data that supports having kids, especially elementary age kids, in masks, except to continue the mantra to fear the healthy. Where there is risk, there must be a choice, and that is why I'm against forced masking of my children. And last we have Tony Teal.
Good evening. Dr. Kilbride, Dr. Chance, school board, everybody. My name is Tony Teole. For those of you who do not know me, my wife Julie and I have been in the district for about 30 years. We have 7 kids. 5 of them have been all the way through the Ritenour district. We have 2 in high school. Our youngest is a freshman. I also own a business, operate out of St. John. I employ many students and alumni from the high school. And so we have a pretty vested interest in this district. I don't have prepared comments. I wasn't even planning on speaking tonight, but I do have something I'd like to share. Echoing the 3 ladies before me, I 100% disagree with a mandatory mask policy or mask requirement or mask expectation or whatever you want to call it. And so does the St. Louis County Council. I've been at 2 of the last 3 county council meetings. You probably heard about them on the news. I don't remember seeing any of you there. You may have heard on the news after the meeting 3 weeks ago that it was a super spreader event. The fact of the matter is, 1 person since that meeting has tested positive with no further spread of COVID. And there were hundreds of people there sitting shoulder to shoulder with no masks, talking and leaning in and acting like normal human beings. There's a vast amount of evidence to indicate that the masks that you all are wearing on your face do absolutely nothing against the virus. None of your masks are fitted, they're paper, they're cloth, they're meaningless. It's a symbol. There's so much evidence to support that and has been for a long time. I'm not going to try to debate it. The information is out there. The psychological, emotional, and physical damage, however, of requiring people, especially kids, to wear masks is unknowable. It's massive. All right, there's tons of evidence to support that too. And Dr. Kilbride, you and I have talked about this for months. Have you talked to any other parent more than me? No. You and I have gone back and forth, and you've told me repeatedly that the split is 50-50 in this district between parents and teachers. I disagree with Ms. Melly and her gentleman that was speaking for her. I don't think the majority of teachers are for masking. I don't think that's true. You all would know better than me, but I just don't believe that. If the split is 50-50, the logical decision then is to make it optional. Those who want a mask, can mask. Those who do not have to. Very simple. I do have one question to close. What is the repercussion for not masking? Is anyone allowed to answer that?
So during public comments, Mr. Teal generally, the board will respond. We can follow up with that.
That'd be appreciated.
Sure.
Thank you. That's all I have to say.
That's everybody. Public comments. Moving on to 2.01, President's Reports. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rob Eaton. And he's going to provide an update on the Coleman and the back to school bash.
Good evening, board. You asked me a week ago how I felt about Coleman's back to school bash. I was ready to run myself. A week ago, we had 17 runners signed up. As of the count that Michelle and I had this evening, we have 89 runners signed up. I have worked with the Oakland Police Department. We now have a route that is approved. We will exit out the backside of the Husky Support Center down Shelley, go 1 block down Woodson Road to Argyle, make a right. We'll follow Argyle up to Charlotte. When you get to Charlotte, we'll have 2 routes. We have an all abilities route that is for any of our special needs students that can't go, so it's going to be about a mile long. They will make a left and follow that back down to the high school. I have worked with Angie Faust and the SSD teams. They will be on that route, running with the students, as well as shooting color on the students that are running, and any adults that choose to do the all abilities route. Then the second route will be a little less than a 5K. You're going to make a right. You go about 3 blocks, make a left, and you go up to Ritenour Middle, cross over Brown. Oakland Police Department will have both Brown Road shut down in 2 locations for us, so that we can safely cross Brown Road. They are also going to go out and put signs up all along the route asking them not to park there for that time frame. We will then go around Ritenour Middle. Tassan has worked with me to be sure to try and get some of the counselors to set up water stations. There will be at least 2 water stations set up so that everybody has adequate hydration. I like Dr. Kilbright, but he kind of scared me. He asked me if I knew what came with 5Ks, and they informed me that heart attacks. And I was like, no, we're not talking about that. But when you start talking about a community event like this doesn't really bring in our big runners. This brings in people in the community that want to participate. So we're going to make sure that we have adequate water supply available. I work with community fire department. They will have a fire engine and an ambulance on standby for us. They will be at the Husky Support Center, just kind of sitting there. In any horrible event, something that would happen. We will circle back around, come in through the entrance of the high school. We did try to talk with like Fleet Feet or something along those lines to get the big time machine out there. Unfortunately, that was way out of our budget. So what we're going to do is work on putting together a balloon arch and then have some people standing there shooting color on runners as they come across. I have purchased a total of 200 color cannons. We have in the community, there has been Bob River Plumbing, Lux Chiropractic, Overland Hardware, and St. John Bank have all donated $250 as a community sponsor. Their names will be printed on the back of the shirts that each runner will be given. Then there were a couple of just individual sponsors. Those names will be announced and throughout the color or the Black and Orange Day. So that will roughly take us around 45 minutes is what we're hoping to get everybody into the high school at that point in time. So that will kick off. I think Dr. Gilbride and I have talked ribbon cutting. They will board the buses to get to the Black and Orange or the ribbon cutting at 9 o'clock. Ribbon cutting starting around between 9 and 9:15. Then give them a half hour to do the Husky Support Center. We will then have the runners go to take places. I am going to send them off in 2 different groups. All abilities are going to kind of hang back just for a few minutes to get the other runners out so that we're not trampling over anybody as they take off. And then get them to the high school. We have worked for Black and Orange Day to do several different things with that. I did make the decision this year to cancel bounce houses. Did not think that was appropriate for this school year. Maybe we'll look at redoing that next year. But for events at the high school, we have each one of the PTOs will have a table set up. The different organizations, I have St. Louis County Police have reached out asking to set up a table. The Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the library, things like that have always been there and supported. We again have motion going to be set up in the upper lobby, the upper lobby portion for child identification, and in the lower lobby, Baton is working with me to work with STL, KRSTL, and we will be offering a COVID vaccination clinic that day also. And then we are working, I'm trying to get final information from activities that they have told me that they're waiting for some answers back, but we're going to have there's a girls volleyball tournament going on that day, I believe. So there will be access to that volleyball tournament to anybody in the community that would like to go. There will be no charge for that, so they can see that. We're trying to get some softball scrimmage possibly and some football scrimmage going on to just kind of kick off the beginning of the school year. I've worked with the DJ that is in place to have that set up on the grounds that day also. So I would encourage, if you guys have chose not to run, I know that I saw Jennifer's name on the list as a runner. If you guys don't want to run, I would love to have you come hang out with us that morning and shoot color. Nothing's more fun for the kids to see than their principals and their board of education and their superintendent shooting them with color as they run. And we do have several, as I went through the list, there are several students that are running. So anybody that would like to see the map, if you have questions, I do have that you're welcome to look at. But I think that is everything I have for an update for this event. And the next time Dr. Gilbride asks me to do 2 minutes at one time, I'm going to run.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eden. Let me just reiterate, because you covered a lot of this already on my report too. So the first day of school is August 25. We're really excited to get back started to the beginning of the school year. And we can't wait to welcome students back for the first day of in-person school. So the big, busy, and fun day, once again, is Saturday, August the 28th. We will begin the day with a grand opening of the Husky Support Center with a ribbon cutting and open house beginning at 9 p.m. The facility is located 9303 Midland Boulevard in Overland. And then once again, 10 a.m., our district will host its first ever color run, sponsored by the Ritenour PTOs. Participants have the opportunity to choose between a 5K and a 1-mile run, fun run. A color run is not like other races. Runners are doused from head to toe in different colors, so that sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Finally, we also have our Black and Orange Back to School Bash, and that is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Ritenour High School. of wonderful activities up there. So I hope everybody can come up and join us. The band's gonna be participating.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, all right. So we'll also hear some music too while we're there. Thank you so much. All right, well, that concludes my reports. And then we can go to 2.02, the superintendent report. Dr. Coleman.
Thank you, Dr. Alden. So board members, there's a letter that's circulating recognizing the St. Anne Police Department. As you know, we recently experienced a tragedy with the tragic passing of one of our valued staff members here in the district. It was a very difficult time, and we're still continuing to support staff members in processing the grief. So during one of the heaviest days, we received a gift basket from the St. Anne Police that was signed by every one of our SROs, as well as every member of the St. Anne Police Department. So I thought that was a perfect example of a high-class move. They're valued partners in our service with every student every day. So if you would sign the letter thanking them for their effort, their thoughtfulness, I also wanted to recognize them in a public meeting and say thank you to the chief. Thank you to every member of the police department for reaching out during our time of need. Also, board members, happy to report that through Books for St. Louis Kids, Ritenour students received 1,500 new books. They're making their way, they made their way into the hands of Ritenour kids this spring and this summer at our elementary schools. They were able to pick books to take home to build their personal libraries at home and to read while they were on summer breaks. Some of the books also went to students from the middle schools as well as the high school. Books for STL Kids has also donated more than 500 books that were included in the meal boxes that were sent home with Ritenour students who were learning in a fully virtual environment last year, when at the point when our schools were completely closed to in-person learning. So we're so thankful for the generosity of Books for STL Kids to help our students continue learning and growing through the summer. It completes my report.
Moving on to 2.03, legislative advocacy committee report.
Sure. So, Dr. Alvin and board members, in the Friday memo was information about a new statute that was passed the last legislative session. It'll be going into effect on August 28th. And it has to do with the candidate filing period for board candidates. Generally, the board candidate filing period is the 15th of December to roughly the 15th of January. So the filing window has been moved. It's been moved up 1 week. So this year, it opens on December 7th. At that point, board candidates can file starting open of business, which is 8 a.m. December 7th, and it closes on December 28th. So board members, if you remember, we go on winter break. The last day of for in-person learning is December 21st. So then the question is, during that last week of time, what would that look like here in the district to support candidates to file for board seats? There is an option that we've discussed, and that is to move board candidate filing to the St. Louis County Board of Elections at Northwest Plaza. The St. Louis County Board of Elections would facilitate the entire process, would remain open during that entire 3-week window, and not create any kind of obstacle to a candidate filing. I hope to hear all your feedback here in the coming days and weeks. We still have some time to make that decision, but do believe that that could be a good option for board candidates. Another why behind that is each of the last 2 years, we've had a couple of issues that have come up in the filing process. If you remember, the notification and advertising of the opening of the filing window was contested a couple of years ago. And then last year, the issue of us having to go ahead and hold an election was a question. So look forward to an individual conversation with each of you in the coming days and weeks. We would need to be making a decision likely September around where we will be with that. Outside of that, at this point, no new news relating to education that I'm prepared to share. Looking forward to getting the LAC meetings on the calendar. We'll likely be starting up in December with our first LAC meeting once we see what pre-filed bills are out there. One last thing that's very new that you're likely to start hearing about is we've not even received the sunshine request yet, but we think it's coming. So it's from a group called Prosper, Missouri. So there is a large sunshine request for records that is reportedly going out to all 520 school districts across the state of Missouri. And from what we understand, it's the largest sunshine request that we'll ever experience. There are 79 terms. This is tied to the CRT debate, the critical race theory debate. There are 79 terms, including equity, advocacy, inclusion, that we're going to be accountable for going back into all of our records back to 2015 and producing any record that has any of those 79 terms in it. So I had a conversation with the attorneys today. The breadth of that sunshine request is unlike anything I've ever seen. The number of hours that it's going to take, number of weeks that it's going to take to produce all those records is significant. So I'll keep you updated on that. From my perspective, beyond being a sunshine request, it feels like there's some punitive piece to that as well. So I'll keep it.
So is it just on our board meetings that they want to know about, or is it any kind of meeting that's held in the whole district?
Any educational record. So education, the definition of an educational record is anything that you track. So it would be board minutes, it would be school documents, it would be any record that's tracked or kept. Report.
2.04 MSBA report. Dr. Thomas.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this time to report on our Missouri School Board Association. If we could, Doug, or Mike, can we run that image?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report for the month of August. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at efforts to provide greater internet access to students throughout Missouri. Currently, about 23% of Missouri students lack internet access at home, while 84 school districts report students lack physical access to broadband. The Director of Broadband Development for the state of Missouri, Tim Arbeiter, told an audience at MSBA's recent Igniting Great Ideas Summit, both infrastructure and affordability are barriers to access for many students and families. Arbeiter says school boards can play an important role in improving internet access by partnering with others in their community.
But sometimes, as leaders, you just need to take the bull by the horns and say, what do we need to do to come alongside maybe our city manager, our presiding commissioner, and a few other folks to help maybe strategize as a team. How do we motivate, incentivize, and attract a provider? Because there are areas in our state where there is none or only one provider, and it makes it an extreme challenge.
Arbeiter says there are a number of state and federal programs now in place aimed at expanding broadband access in Missouri. Applications are opening this month for grants aimed at addressing the teacher shortage in Missouri. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has designated more than $50 million in coronavirus relief funds to establish teacher recruitment and retention grants for school districts. The goals of the grants include attracting more people to the teaching profession and providing greater support for current teachers to improve retention. DESE Assistant Commissioner Paul Katnick tells us he hopes many of the grants will be used to expand what are known as Grow Your Own programs aimed at encouraging high school students to become teachers.
Future Missouri teachers are sitting in Missouri school districts right now. That's where they're going to come from. And we've talked to way too many high school kids in school districts who never consider the teaching profession because no one's asked them if they would ever consider it. No one has said to a student, you would be a great teacher. I mean, love math, you're good at it, you'd be a great math teacher. And we're not talking about valedictorian straight A students. Sometimes students that work hard in school make great teachers. And we as a profession have to think some succession plan here about furthering the profession after we're done.
Katnick says recruiting and retaining teachers must be a community effort.
It's not just a teacher who's agreed to run some club. It's a community effort because when a school can't find teachers, and we had examples of that this year where schools went virtual because they didn't have enough teachers, that impacts the whole community. So everybody in a community ought to care about this issue and band together and help support it. That's when it works at its best. That's what we've seen in districts with long-running programs. The entire community embraces it, and I just think school board members have such an important role in making it a priority, supporting superintendent and the school personnel and making it happen, making it work.
Katnick says Missouri's teacher shortage has only become worse during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that he has yet to talk to a school district leader who isn't facing teacher vacancies heading into the new school year. Registration is now open for the 2021 MSBA Annual Conference in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators, to be held November 5th through 7th in Kansas City. The event will once again feature numerous breakout sessions and workshops, many presented by school leaders from districts throughout the state, along with a great lineup of general session speakers, all in a new location at the Kansas City Convention Center. Among the general session speakers this year is Gene Becker, a Missouri Public School graduate who served as President George H.W. Bush's chief of staff from the time he left office until his death in 2018. And don't forget the 2021 Safe School Psychologists Forum, sponsored by MSBA Center for Education Safety, that will be held this year on November 4th in conjunction with the annual conference in Kansas City. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
So along with the opportunity in November to go to Kansas City and pick up some knowledge and training there through the Missouri School Board Association, I would encourage everyone to continue reading their emails as the NSBA and MSBA and some other organizations as well have sent us some opportunities, some links, some webinars to keep current on things, whether it be COVID, whether it be all current events, are being sent to us. And take time, read those emails, and if you really do want to go to and take part in one of those webinars, let Chris and Michelle know if there's a cost. The board does have a budget line item for training and such. So it's part of our duty to keep up with what's going on. And please take advantage of that.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. And follow up with that, I think we're supposed to have a certain number of hours that we're supposed to be keeping up with, just to keep up with our education too.
Yes.
That's always good information to keep us up to date.
And I don't know where you are with your training or anything, but
Yeah. Yeah. well, that's it.
you got it done?
Yeah.
All right, good job.
Or at the third Coleman, but I did that other board members stuff from the other districts.
Hope it gave you a little bit of perspective, more information, things like that.
It was good, and it was very snazzy. Their technology setup was like seamless. It was very good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you.
Moving on to 2.05, the special school district report.
I have nothing to report. We will be meeting next month.
Thank you. Then we'll move to business items, 3.01, transportation update. Mr. Brian Sanford.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am doing the transportation department update, and I am happy and excited to report that we are about to begin our 5th year of owning and operating our own buses, and that we've had 4 very successful years in this state. RST Vision, Ritenour School District, in partnership with parents and community, will develop leaders recognized for academic excellence and produce graduates who will become productive citizens. Personal integrity. The mission for Ritenour School District that will ensure learning occurs in a supportive environment that enables every student to think critically, solve problems, and develop the knowledge and skills necessary for success in our diverse global society. How we do that in transportation, through our equity statement, we will provide a welcoming environment and immediate greeting whenever stakeholders, i.e. students, staff, parents, etc., enter our spaces, our school buses, our offices, etc. Our school buses, and our drivers rather, are the first and last point of contact for our students who ride the school buses. And so we will create a welcoming environment for them. So about the department, we have 28 school buses, all 4 years old and still beautiful. One is a wheelchair lift bus, and we are located at the Husky Support Center. We have 24 route drivers, so in the past we've had lost a few drivers. But to start this school year off, I have full-time drivers for every one of our 24 routes. So that is on top of it. I have 2.5 substitute bus drivers. Those 2.5 will be used for away athletic trips, to cover for open routes that the driver gets sick, etc. There's myself, the director, my router dispatcher, Sheldon Gibbons, my office professional, Ms. Briggs. At the time that I did this report, we had 5,323 students currently registered with the district. That has increased, so I think we're just under 6,000. Correct. Maybe it's just over, yeah, real close. So we do have, again, a few days ago, we had 3, and it is increasing here today. 3,472 students currently assigned to bus routes. Now, this is an average of students that rode for the 2021 school year. It's very low because of just under 1,300 students. Of course, that's because we had hybrid learning as well as RPA. So normally we transport closer to 3,000 of those 30, let's call it just under 3,500 students that are registered. Last year, we drove a cumulative of 110,000 miles for all of our 28 buses. All my drivers were given the 8 hours of professional development required by DESE, and we will begin in a new year of training next week, August 18th through the 20th for the 2022 school. So our personnel department, our transportation personnel rather, we have finished up the summer school routes and put them in the closet until next year. We have compiled the data necessary for DESE for the 2021 school year, and we have finished our routes preparations for the 21-22 school. We have been communicating with principals, administrators at the K-12 buildings to make sure that we're all working on the same page. We all have the same drop times and pickup times, that we're all going in the same direction when we drop our kids off and so on. There are a lot of changes this year with each of the buildings, and I've been in communication with the principals, and we are making sure that we'll have a steady I do expect all of my routes to be filled by full-time drivers in the school year. And if there is a situation where drivers cannot be there, we have subs in place, and I'm actually this has been a good year for applicants, at least over the summer. So we're in preparation for that. So all the buses have been cleaned. Last year, because of COVID, we didn't clean the exterior of them. They are spick and span this year. I mean, they're beautiful. So general maintenance is currently being performed, as well as this. We have state inspections only twice a year. Our dealer is inspecting them now. I've got several down there at the dealership being inspected. Anything that doesn't pass, they are fixing, and so it's correct by the time I get that, have it ready for day one for the 21. Again, we will start orientation for drivers for current training and orientation next week on the 7th. Now, for 21-22, we do have the bus stops in place, and we are working with our IT department to make sure that the contact information or the pickup information, stop information is communicated to all of our registered students. That will be done next week. We have 2 route structures. One is to carry our kids to school, the other is to deliver food. So we are on in case we have to pivot back to that. I don't, but I think we won't. But let's get optimistic. We've got our routes in place. So for last school year, and again, it was abbreviated because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a 99.6 on-time delivery. So that's maintained above a 99.5 in our entire 4-year run. Set up for this year. All of our buses did pass the Missouri State Highway Patrol inspection this year without any buses being pulled from service due to any mechanical failures. Yep.
That number of students, I was shocked to see that it was that low. You know, that's every year I've been on the board. You know, it's 26 now. We have never had under 6,000.
Yeah. So it's 5,800, 5,850 is where we are right now. Our projections at this point are, we've got lower numbers of students, specifically kindergarten. We projected 518 kindergarten students based on our live birth data. We are sitting at about 275 kindergarten students. So during this time of the pandemic, I think people are making decisions. You know, they're making decisions about whether they want to send their kids to school. They're making decisions about virtual options. That's a big factor. We also know that kids in the pandemic have spread all over the place. You know, a number of our students that were with us, they might have moved in with family in the state. Registration is getting busier and busier every day as we get closer to the beginning of the year. So we expect that we're going to have a real crunch, you know, even up to Labor Day with registrations. But, you know, in my experience in this role too, we're low. I think it's a direct result.
I was going to ask, are those numbers too, including the early childhood center?
The 5,800, Ms. Hahn, does that include the early childhood center as well?
No, it does not. And the early childhood center right now is at 71. And it pulses up to date right now. It looks like we've gone up a little bit, so we're getting closer to 6,000.
And so the early childhood center, we've had a high of 230 at the early childhood center. The highest we served last year was 9. And I think it's some uncertainty.
The other thing is, how many miles do we do the year before?
It was close to 200,000 miles. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was about. We still drove the buses for delivering food,
Right.
But the route is 3 tiers, and the food routes were only 2. So there was, and they weren't as detailed. I guess the stops, there weren't as many stops. We weren't covering there as much. So it was between 180 and 200,000. I don't remember the exact number. Yeah, quite a bit.
That's because like athletics and activities also being.
I mean, it's a number of reasons. The fact that we didn't run on Fridays, first part of the school year, we were just just delivery food, those were a lot smaller routes. We weren't driving to the mall. We don't have field, we did have field trips last year, that was a lot of miles, and the athletic trips. And we didn't go as far, for our athletic trips, we had to stay with this area.
I appreciate your report, but like I usually want to ask of everyone who does report, I always like to see what happened the year before or these couple of years, because we have to know what happened before.
Right.
To see what happened now, so that we can be prepared, so, yeah, I just think that. But thank you.
Congratulations, Bill, you and Michael Chance and group for having your fully staffed crew. I don't think we've gone a night this week where the evening news reminds us that some school districts are 30, 40, 50 bus drivers down and are desperately looking to see what they can do to cut their bus routes, change them, and such. So
We were blessed to.
it's great to hear that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see it because we've had a lot of our drivers who have reached out to drivers in other school districts and let them know that what a great place this is to work. And luckily, without mentioning any other school districts, we've had several school districts around that are close to us that have made some changes that the drivers weren't happy with. They have done a mass exodus from it, which is great for us.
It's the environment there that you guys set up that attracts people. And I know I appreciate it because we don't have, that's one less thing we have to worry about. A thing about is how we go get these buses going if we don't have any drivers. I do have a question. Usually at the beginning of schools, it's been of late last few years that we've had teachers or staff ride on the buses first week or first few days. So we're going to be doing that.
Yeah, it's the expectation the first week that they would, so that'd be the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, everyone at the elementary level. So at every
Right.
elementary, they would do that. It's not at middle and high, so that would be for the first 3 days.
We got that all planned out.
That
It's usually a good thing for the kids and for the parents and the teachers get it out too. And they all get to meet everybody at bus stops and such like that. It's really a good way to informally greet the kids before they even get to school.
And the people who ride the buses with the drivers, they always comment that it's another perspective that they never saw. Last time they rode a bus when they were a kid riding a bus, and so to see it as an adult from that instant perspective, they gain a lot of respect that they may not have had.
I looked at my notes and I have a few more, sorry.
It's okay.
We got the small van that we use. Do we have a driver that is assigned to that, or is that just one of your 2.5 people? Is that your half person?
Well, so, yeah, we don't have what we did when it was running full time. We had somebody assigned to it. He was a sub driver. He's now a full time driver for us. So, we weren't sure about the health center working or not working. So, yeah, that'll first go out to my subs as an offer. That's what we're going to do, is use that van. And I, quite frankly, I think of the ones that I have, we'll be able to fill it. Yeah, I like to keep it 1, maybe 2 drivers at most, because there's a way of doing it. You got to go get the student, bring them to the van, make sure they get inside of the health, and that was on the second floor.
Right.
And so, hopefully once it moves over to the Husky Support Center, we'll actually have I think, better control over how students do it. It'll just be a more smooth operation.
But that's not part of the 24 routes that you're talking about. It's part of the 28 buses. That you're
It's
talking
not.
about?
So the van is a 29th vehicle, and we actually call it vehicle 29. We call out by the route number. We'll call the drivers, and it's 29. And so, yes, it is a 29th vehicle. And it's it's not under the scrutiny, of course, that the buses are, because the school bus by law has to have these maintenance and the inspections and so on. But, it's inspected every year, I make sure it's, you know, the tires, and she'll wipe the pillows, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I think one, you know, it's taken care of by Dobbs right now. But I think once we get a shop, you know, in the near future, we'll have a mechanic look at it. It's a great thing to have that.
The other thing I wanted to share with you and everybody else is that the neighbors have come and talked to me about how wonderful everything has been going all summer and how pleased they are. The only complaint that they have, and I'm sure that you already know this because I already asked Gilbride to check into it, is the backup noise because it's so loud and that really bothers them. But as I understand it, that cannot be lowered.
I would love to disconnect those. But we can't, Alice.
No, I mean, you can't, the volume cannot be.
No, and it is, so, because we have new buses, I mean, if they were old buses, you know, they would grandfather in, we wouldn't have to have that. But, I'd rather have the new buses deal with the noise, because I usually have old buses where it came from, it's not.
I mean, it's an important feature, it's just. that
Yeah,
it is
and
very
unfortunately, it's required, a big sticker on the dash says, do not disconnect. And
Right.
It's easy to disconnect.
Don't tell them that.
Drive a bus long enough, you learn.
Yeah. So anyway, so thank you.
All right, everyone.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you
Brian.
so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we put up to you, first day of school planning, Dr. Kilbride.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alvin. So we've got Dr. Green and Dr. Haywood who are here with us tonight. And so as they make their way up to the table, so the superintendent generally gives a first day of school planning report, but this year we're approaching it a bit differently. We're undergoing some significant change at Ritenour High School, so I could talk to you about all of the planning that's taking place in all of the schools. However, thought that we would yield the time to Dr. Haywood and Dr. Green to talk about the plan that they put in place for Ritenour High School for the first day of school.
Absolutely. And good evening, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Gilbride. And tonight, Dr. Haywood and I, principal of Ritenour High School, will talk about our first day of school plan. As we look at our vision and our mission, as well as the activity statement, we wanted to ensure that our plan for the first day was aligned. It is our goal to produce graduates that will become productive contributors to our society. In addition to our mission, we wanted to ensure that we continue to foster a supportive environment that enables all students to think critically, solve problems, and develop the knowledge and skills necessary for students in our diverse global society. To do this work, we go back to our equity statement, and the equity statement is on the screen. But one of the things that we wanted to ensure and highlight is that we provide an environment that personifies high expectations for all faculty, staff, as well as students. So as we look to the first day of school, we looked at 4 areas. And the first area that we looked at was collaboration on our CC, our comprehensive school. And when we looked at that, you'll hear tonight from Dr. Haywood 3 goals that are implemented to deal with academic achievement, college and career readiness, as well as attendance. And the goals, as well as strategies and some action steps that are embedded within that we plan to put in place to ensure that our students have a productive school. The second thing we chose to look at was student schedules. We wanted to provide a timeline as to when students will get schedules, have access to schedules, and clearly make sure that we articulate the schedule change process and how we will go about that for this school year. And then also put some things in place for our master schedule for the next school year. Culture and climate is definitely a good culture, the way we do things around here. Wanted to make sure that we specifically address the culture and climate at the school. So you're here tonight from Dr. Haywood, some initiatives that she plans to implement in the school. We are particularly excited about one of them, and that is our 8th to 9th grade transition, looking at some transitional activities for our students that will be coming into high school for the 2021-2022. And last but not least, building and grounds, beautification. There's some efforts that are already underway. Dr. Haywood will talk about those. But we are particularly excited about some of the things that we are doing importantly, in the school, and will continue to do as the school year progresses.
Thank you, Dr. Green, and good evening to everyone. So in terms of looking at planning for the first day of school, it is important that we had a comprehensive plan. And these plans will be, this plan will be the driver for everything that happens in the school throughout the course of the year. And so for goal one, it does take a very close look at the academic achievement of every student in the building. In order for all of our students to be successful, we have to make sure that there are systems and structures in place that monitor and support their academic achievement along with our subgroup achievement. And we made sure that we included mention of our subgroup achievement because we want to make sure it's not lost in all of our efforts throughout the school year. As we're looking at these strategies to accomplish this goal, the primary strategy or the foundational strategy will be re-anchoring our staff to the PLC process, because through that process, we make sure that our students are achieving standard mastery. And during that process, there's also a cycle where through goal setting, we look at data cycles to make sure that our students are actually performing and advancing at the rate that we would expect, so that when they are assessed by the state, they are in fact performing proficient or advanced on those standards. The secondary instructional model will be what we utilize with Fidelity to make sure that that occurs in every classroom every day. Looking at data, so I already mentioned the data cycle. It's important that having a goal or having a plan that we're monitoring and utilizing the data to make necessary adjustments throughout the course of the year. Because just because you have a plan doesn't mean that you aren't going to do it. We all know that very well based off what we're experiencing right now in our society. And so we'll be looking at that on a regular basis. In terms of increasing administrator accountability, I certainly chuckled as we added this to the slides tonight, but it's important that all administration owns the data in a really personal way, and then we convey that to our teachers as well, so that our students are able to be as successful as possible. The use of collaboration has been intensive, and so we have had the opportunity to be reviewed by peers. We've also worked very closely together on a regular basis to make sure that the goals that are written are goals that we believe are accomplishable and goals that we believe are necessary so that our students can be successful in our schools. I've already mentioned a little about the vertical alignment from the 8th to 9th grade transition support. Wanting to make sure that at the middle school level, there's a clear understanding of what a student needs to be able to do and what they need to know in order to be successful for high school, both academically and socially. And so I've enjoyed speaking with the middle school administrators under the direction and leadership of Dr. Green so that we can improve this process moving forward. And then increase communication with families. We don't want them to be surprised about the progress or status of their student. They should be very comfortable and knowledgeable about how their student is performing. The second bill speaks to the fact that we want them, after they enlist, to be able to enter whatever option they desire as far as college and career. And so again, systems and structures have to be in place where we're monitoring the progress of our students and supporting them towards graduation, college and career readiness. And so it's believed that if we start strong with our freshmen on track, then we'll have a better opportunity of supporting them through their high school experience, and they will graduate on time. The increased community partnership speaks to the fact that we want them to be exposed to opportunities. It's when they get excited about what they want to do beyond our space, then we're able to keep them engaged in the classroom. And that helps to support their desire, because it's, as a high school student, they have to take some personal accountability as well. So looking to see how opportunities to increase community partnership throughout the region. Monthly, quarterly reviews really speak to our counselors, and so they are the ones that were most in tune with the individual career academic plans of each student, being able to speak to us as administration and families about where the students are in terms of on track towards graduation. The area of course offerings that reflect workforce projections is one that I think we have a great opportunity to look closer at. We want to make sure that our students are taking courses that will put them in position to walk into the workforce where jobs will actually exist. So we'll be taking a lot of a closer in-depth look at our course offerings throughout the next year to make sure that we are offering courses that students want to enroll in, but also courses that will put them in a position to be successful beyond their high school experience. Again, the secondary instructional model, because being able to be an effective communicator is in fact a very important skill as you move into college and career. And then looking at the data again to support the decisions that we're making. Increase administrative accountability and again, increasing communication with families. And finally, goal 3 of this comprehensive plan speaks to the fact that we need our students in the seats every day. So 90% of students attending 90% of the time. Looking again at those structures and systems to monitor their attendance. What I believe is unique here, coming off of the pandemic, is there's no secret that this will be a tremendous challenge. Getting our students re-engaged after having hybrid schedules for the entire academic year, and then some students working virtually that are now going to be full-time in person. And so we will have a very robust attendance monitoring process with our attendance team. Also, we'll be looking at the multi-tier system of supports because acknowledging that some of our students have experienced some traumas as they've been outside of school, and to embrace those philosophies of restoring them to the school community. Also recognizing that just as a community, we've experienced some collective traumas. And so we are going to be engaging our counselors, social workers, and entire school staff around what it means to be a school that subscribes to the MTSS process. And then constantly monitoring again the data to determine what tier we should be intervening on for those students. So as mentioned by Dr. Green, student schedules, important topic. We want to make sure that we're following a timeline that puts us in position to have a learning environment that is conducive and ready on the first day of school and all days of school. And so the process currently is that during the spring, course requests are made by students. And then there's a transcript audit by the counselors to make sure that the courses that have been requested actually meet align to the graduation requirements. There's an approval this year for virtual requests based off courses that are offered. And if the course is not offered, we have student support team meetings to speak with families and students about other options that are available to them. The master schedule was then created. Individual student schedules are currently being finalized. The next step will be to issue those schedules. There will be a second senior's transcript graduation audit to make sure, just as a safeguard, that all of the courses that those students need are actually on their schedule. And if there's a need for changes, those will occur. Student schedules are expected to be released through the portal 1 week prior to school opening. So students will be able to look at their schedule a week prior to the first day of school. And then on the first day of school, students will attend grade level meetings through their advisories where they will receive an updated schedule if necessary. Our 9th graders will receive their schedules from our transition back. Finally, this slide about student schedules really speaks to any need for changes. And so we try to avoid making changes as much as possible because of the impact on the school's master schedule. So when we have lots of student schedules, that's a negative impact on the master schedule. However, sometimes it is necessary. And so our 12th graders are a priority because of graduation. And then we'll move to the 9th through the 11th graders in the following week to make those schedule changes. Students sign up for a time to meet with their counselor through their lunchtime or passing time. And then any change that has to happen will go through the guidance office. If there's a need for administration approval, then the guidance counselor along with the grade level administrator will work through that with the student and their family. This year, to make sure that we are in step with meeting our students' needs, there is a plan to do a course catalog update. We'll look at the course selection process. So if our students are on a path for one of the 3 E's, make sure that those courses are being offered. We plan to have a curriculum night for all high school students. We want them to be just as excited about academics and celebrated as they are for athletics and other activities. The 8th to 9th grade transition activity that is most exciting is the return to a summer transition tree for our 8th graders coming into our 9th grade, so that they will understand how things are done at the high school level. And finally, a master board training to develop all high school administrators. Currently, there's 2 of the 5 of us that are familiar with scheduling through Tyler system. We want to make sure that all 5 of us have that skill set. Culture and climate at the high school is always something that we will be keeping a pulse of. We want to keep the temperature of the school good so that students are able to learn. And so the 8th to 9th grade transition, I've already kind of spoken to that. So I'll keep going on that piece. And then the freshman on track is something that we're looking to create a student support team specifically for our freshmen to ensure, again, that they start strong and remain on track. The grade level expectations meetings will happen during the first week of the school year. So on our Wednesday, the first day of school is our Howdy Day. It's a welcoming opportunity to do community building, to get to know you activities from each of the classes as the students travel through their 7th grade day with low risk activities. But on Thursday and Friday, we will have 9th, 12th grade grade level meetings to reacclimate students to the return to school. And I'll take these in reverse order, but the well-being of staff and students is very important as we return to learning after coming 15, 17 months from a non-traditional school setting. And it never escapes me that many of our students, as well as our staff, have experienced loss in a variety of ways, whether it be employment, housing, family members. And so we want to make sure that we keep in mind that this is a period of healing while also maintaining high expectations. And so we will be doing different things throughout the course of the year to monitor morale, but specifically to make sure that we maintain and increase morale in the school building. And so how we're going to do that, again, is embracing the philosophies of trauma-informed care, restorative practices, and then leading into those universals to create the cohesive learning environment that we need for our students to be successful. And finally, some fun stuff around upgrades or enhancements that are occurring on the campus. Some of them are already underway. So we want, when the community drives past the school, for there to be a sense of pride and also evidence that the school district is being fiscally responsible, but continuing to march forward with a strong future and positive presence in the community. We want to stand out in ways in competition with our surrounding school districts. And so some of the beautification efforts that are underway are the pole flags that as you come down this St. Charles Rock Road, you'll notice, and they're currently being installed, new flags that have been hung that say welcome to Ritenour High School, Bar HS, and that we're committed to serving every student every day. In addition to that, some services throughout the school are being covered. They'll have inspirational messages. They also will have the school's mantra and mottos so that when students walk through, incidentally, they'll be reminded of what it means to be a Ritenour Husky. And there are a number of other efforts here. The press box is being renovated, so thank you to Mike Smith and his team for making sure that it's all happening. And it's going to be beautiful. So I can't wait for us to have our first football game there in competition so everyone can see it. Some additional items here, just the planners. So making sure that aesthetically it's welcoming. The planners will be refreshed, flower beds will be bright. Students will walk past and enter a school and staff and families of school that speaks to the fact that we are ready for them to return and excited about it. We'll make sure that we maintain it by walking through the facility weekly with the lead custodian and then having quarterly walkthroughs and conversations around work order updates. Questions? Not a question, suggestions and hierarchy is part of your plan. Several times during our Hall of Fame, the people who are getting inducted have talked about the importance that a teacher made in their life by calling them and having a personal relationship. And while I know mostly the secretaries are the ones who track the people who aren't in school, I think the really important people are, not that they're not important, the ones that make a big difference are the teachers. If they have really missed you in class today, perhaps you already have that as part of your plan, but we have heard that several times. It's Hall of Famers, how teacher rep group. Typically about one who said he dropped out of school because his just was tired of it. His family had up their own business. They were poor. They said, come and work with your uncle. And went to the principal of the high school who went and said, hey, you need to come back to school. And he did. And now I'm about to think that he was successful with his education. Just something, just a suggestion. Thank you.
May I add on to that?
Sure.
Also, where you say the teachers deserve a lot of credit, I also agree, but I think that another amount of teachers who deserve a lot of credit that don't really get credited or like noticed are substitute teachers. How we have many substitute teachers who've been with Ritenour for years and they don't really get credited a lot or acknowledged a lot, when I know that there is a lot of students around high school and elementary school and middle schools who notice new substitute teachers and old substitute teachers, just like, hey, I remember you. So I think they should.
That's a good point. Also, if somebody wants to make a change to their schedule, like you said, passing time, can they do that electronically or do they have to actually go to the office and write something out?
No, currently they have to go to the counseling suite to schedule an appointment, but I'll make a note to see if there's possibility. I know they could probably email the counselor, so I'll look into ways that they can do
Yeah,
it.
it seems like you could send an email to the secretary of the counselors and say, I'd like to make an appointment, but we do that in our everyday life, a lot of things, so it seems like we ought to be able to incorporate that. And I was asked a question, but you probably are not the ones to answer this because you're talking about high school, but I was asked by a middle school student when the schedule was coming out. Any answer on that?
We can look into it. I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I have a question regarding Chromebooks. I know that there's a lot of emails going out to students, high school students right now. I'm looking at Chromebooks being returned from high school level. To gather those Chromebooks.
So what I can say is that through the 3 days that we've distributed this week, a number of the students who came had their Chromebook in hand. And so we had them sign up for the insurance again for this upcoming school year, and then reactivated the Chromebook. So fingers crossed, that's the story of the outstanding Chromebooks, since that has been the pattern for those who come in. We've had about 50% come with the Chromebook.
That is.
I'd like to know where they're at. The other thing had a question about, this may be more for the adult team, but have we thought about for those students that we know are kind of go by the wayside or we're not seeing them yet in that almost 6,000 number? Have we thought about the welcome or gloves teams going out doing some door knocking? And once you're back, we miss you. Is that going on anywhere?
It hasn't started, they'll be back next week and then we'll start some of that, yes.
Well, any other questions, comments?
I will say, I'm excited to see what you're doing as far as the building beautification and everything, because I think that draws the students in and it makes them proud of their area. And I hope that this also trickles down to our middle school level too.
Yeah, I saw the new signs actually this week when we were driving by. I went, hey, look, there's a new sign. Oh, yes, yeah, awesome.
And I think it makes the community. Like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
So
I would just like to make a comment about you were talking about the counselors and, where they can go in the counselor's office and sign up. I was at the high school the last 2 years, and she and some of her friends, it was like, they would talk about, don't even bother going to the counselor's office and fill out a paper, because they never call you anyway. And it was several students that I heard that from. And I myself, especially the freshman year, had trouble with trying to contact a counselor, myself. And it was just like, you can't get through. You cannot get through, and you can leave a message, it's kind of a 50-50 chance of whether you get an return answer, return call, or whatever, or an email. So, that's something to keep track of. I mean, are they really looking at these papers and, that people put in this request, and are they really getting to
that will be a great opportunity if we create a electronic file, so I'll be able to see who actually signed up and when they actually have enlisted. Thank you.
Yeah, we've had one of them in the past in high school where you're supposed to sign up online. I haven't had a chance where no counselor has contacted me, but I know we like multiple students and teachers that I talk to when I would like to contact the counselor. Most of the time, do it online, and it's easier for them to reach. So maybe try that next time, ask them to see if they can do the little thing up in the corner of the Chromebook. You can find it. It would be cool and easier to contact them going all the way to council office with the paper they to show the classroom.
Suggest how to make that is when the students have a grade level very best assigned to them. And sometimes I have found that that person's name to the email.
Yep, that's good. It's best practice. Thank you for all the questions. Anything else? Everything?
Look forward to it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to 3.03, STLCC agreement for dual credit and enrollment. For Dr. Denise Stewart.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Like we're a lot closer. So Dr. Creed and I, we take the lead on dual credit, dual enrollment in Ritenour School District. So this presentation will just provide some details and information about dual credit, dual enrollment and some changes. So our vision, Ritenour School District works in collaboration with parents and the community to develop leaders that are recognized for academic excellence and high levels of integrity. Our mission is to ensure that students are thinking critically, able to solve problems, and they learn in a nurturing environment that prepares them for success in a diverse global society. Dual credit and dual enrollment programs really directly correlates with our equity statement by providing opportunity and access to students who qualify for the dual credit and dual enrollment programs. Resources are allocated so students are able to do what they need. There's low cost tuition, financial support with books, transportation for students, and really a really low cost tuition. I'm going to say that twice because it's really a great opportunity for our students. Dual enrollment at St. Louis Community College, and just to review, dual enrollment is when students take college courses at the college and they receive high school credit and college credit for it. So during our last school year, we had about 45 students that enrolled in St. Louis Community College. And out of those 45 students, they took 68 different classes, which resulted in about 233 course grades. Approximately 86% of those students earned a C or better, which is great. The cost of that with tuition and books was $57,861.17.
Is that the cost of our district, or was that the cost by the patrons?
That's the cost of our district.
Okay, thank you.
We pay for dual enrollment students and the parents pay for dual credit.
Awesome, thank you.
So as it relates to dual enrollment, we wanted to provide a little visual for dual enrollment. Approximately 56% of our students earned A's and 19% of our students earned B's and about 11% earned C's. When we look at this graph, it really is the number of grades earned, not the number of students. It's because students take multiple classes, right? We want to provide data on the grades earned. So you'll see that 86% of our students earn a C or better. Turn over to Dr. Green.
So good evening again. As for dual credit, we had 101 students that took advantage of dual credit. We We offer 15 sections and 15 courses. The number of parentheses for the colleges that are listed are the number of sections and courses that are offered by the college. Again, dual credit is our teachers teaching course, and then students have the option to pay $25 per credit hour to receive collegiate credit. So for Missouri Baptist, there were 3 courses that were offered at St. Louis Community College. We're looking at 8, and St. Louis University, 4 courses. 10 of our high school teachers were eligible to teach those 15 courses that we offered last year, of which we were very excited about the data that's below. But we do see opportunities in the data to where 205 grades were earned, and roughly 92% of those grades were C or better. The breakdown on the screen is by semester. So first semester, 94% of those grades were C or better, and then 87% of the grades for second semester were a C or better. Again, a visual just to represent what our students did in terms of grades earned. Again, these are the number of grades earned. That's what the number of blue bar represents. So 66% of those grades were A's, 20% were B's, and 6% were C's. Again, those are approximations. So we're looking at roughly 8% of those grades being D's or F's. There's opportunity there, opportunity for us to continue to work with those students as well as those families, teachers, and counselors to provide a layer of support so that students that are falling below C level, or really the goal is for students to get an A, but it's for students that are falling below C level that they receive intervention support. Given that these are dual credit classes, we do have the opportunity to see what those grades are as students are progressing. So we can review those grades as they get their progress reports and water report cards so that we can put the interventions and supports in place for our students. Toward the beginning versus learning at the beginning. So we look at the business impact. We continue to take advantage of the Emerson STEM Academy grant. That grant does pay for textbooks as well as transportation. Our expenses for our dual enrollment, there is an increase of $5.50. So there's just a breakdown on the screen for just a representation of what that looks like. Again, Dr. Stewart mentioned that we do pay for dual enrollment for students. So we're looking at an increase of $5.50 per credit hour for our students. So an average student may take 6 units. It was $67. It'll be $402 with the increase. We're looking at about $33 for 6, well, actually $33, not about $33 for 6 units of credit. Additionally, there are lab fees as well as textbooks that we pay for. Already made mention of better utilization of the counselor and terms coordinator that's supporting our students both on the dual credit as well as the dual enrollment side. So being very intentional around making sure that they provide support for students that are college taking courses as well. All right, so.
This is some of what we have stated. The cost for dual enrollment has increased to $72.50 per credit hour. Last year was $67 per credit hour. And the cost for dual credit is still $25 per credit unit. So that has not increased. Our Emerson STEM Academy covers textbook fees and transportation. And we're excited that we have 3 students in Ritenour that were accepted in the Emerson STEM Academy.
The board members are happy to share, the first cohort of students to earn their high school diploma and their associate's degree. The first cohort graduated this year. We're on track to have the cohort double in size. So we've got at least 10 students that are on track to walk across the stage with their diploma and their associate's degree.
So included in your 4 docs of the memorandum of understanding shows the cost for dual enrollment being $72.50 per credit hour, which is an increase of $5.50 per credit hour, and $25 for dual credit per credit hour. We're asking for your approval of $72.50 per credit hour for dual enrollment courses at St. Louis Community College for Husky Valley as presented for the 21.
St. Louis Community College agreement for dual credit and enrollment for the 2021 school year as presented.
Second.
Right. Ms. Nessa, you make this step up. Mrs. Ruth Fairweather? Yes. Mrs. Lisa Glover Jones? Yes. Cindy Garden? Yes. Ms. Jennifer Lonis?
Yes.
Dr. Chris Thomas?
Absolutely.
And I vote yes. Your wonderful program.
I have one question. I think you really covered it, but my concern was if we follow up with the ones who didn't get to see or better, we kind of talked about, we're gonna track that, look at it, because I think that's really important. And I also noticed that on the slides on the one, it showed 12 withdrawn, but then on the other one, it didn't show any withdrawn.
Absolutely.
So is there no withdrawn on the second semester?
No withdrawal for the dual credit. The dual enrollment, they would do from the college level.
Right.
Oftentimes, that happens where they withdraw before the day. But
Sure.
we have to utilize the counseling support in the school. With that transpiring.
We did look at that data real closely. There was actually 8 students that withdrew from 12 courses. So that is something that we need to look into and follow up and support those students.
Did they withdraw totally from the program, or they just withdrew from a certain course?
Withdrew from the course is my understanding.
Okay, but they might still have been part, like somebody in the A could have been one that also withdrew a course, but still got an A.
Yeah, they could withdraw one class and not another.
Just want to make sure I'm understanding the process. Okay. Thank you so much.
And I have one comment too, just from my own personal experience. Having Anna in this program, the STLC really holds the students accountable for grades. So like on Tyler, I can't see what she's getting. She knows what she's getting. And I have to ask her to see how she's doing. So I really appreciate the fact that you are following through to kind of also see the grades. So it's kind of out of the parents' hands. So like on the Tyler, I could kind of follow her if there was some like paper due. But when it comes to TLCC, I mean, they do really hold the kids to a much this caliber. You were in college, so you were responsible.
It's a law, I believe.
Yeah.
They can't give it to you unless the student says.
Right, exactly. And so I'm glad that you're also kind of following just to make sure that things are getting done for those kiddos too, so that if they need the help, you can help before it's too late. So I really appreciate that.
Very important.
Thank you so much.
I have one question. When you're looking at the classes and the Ds and the Fs and everything, are we looking at like same class or, like, so there's just kind of, the that class was not successful or?
We did look at some of that data. In fact, I know that one class, virtually, when we were talking with a high school, some of the students didn't do well with the psychology class virtually. We talked to St. Louis Community College, talked about, maybe the professor. Let's, talk about which professor we need for our students, because some of our, they need a little support,
Right.
So we want to make sure so that they, our counselors at our high schools really advocated for this one professor that really worked well with our students. And so we talked to St. Louis Community College and changed the professor. And so, yeah, we are looking at some of the courses that some of our students may have struggled in and why. So I think we have some data too.
I was just going to add for dual credit. We looked at the 15 courses as well. And 11 of those 15 courses are sections that were offered, that was 100% pass rate. So we've identified those 4 courses where we didn't have 100% of our students pass. So we know those courses, we actually have teacher nights that are associated with those courses. So we provide that information as those students need.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Master 3.04 St. John's Bay signature authorization approval. Mr. White.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is a new item for the board. As sometimes happens, St. John's Bank has changed their procedures and policies, and now they wanted a resolution from the board naming the 2 authorized signatures so that we can put those, add those signatures to our checks. So this is simply authorizing, as the board already did in the policy, but elected Dr. Alvin Wilson as president and appointing me as treasurer. And here are the two authorized signatures, and that's what the resolution says. And I just wrote it so that it's any financial institution that we have an open account, not simply, not strictly St. John's, any institution.
So you both be able to sign everything now?
Yes, those are, they're facsimile.
Yeah.
We don't
Right.
physically sign.
Right.
Yes, we've always required two signatures.
So the motion only has spaces. Okay. Should have been yours as well.
Yes, you're actually approving the resolution, which states both of us. Yes.
We're approving the resolution. The resolution all has Stacy's name on it.
Yes, it does.
It should have your name there too.
No,
So Dwight's name is already on the check at this point, so the change in the name is the.
Okay. Well, then I move that we approve the St. John Bank signature authorization resolution with Dr. Stacy Ellen Wilson's signature as presented.
second. Dr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mrs. Lawrence.
Yes.
Mr. Gardner.
Yes.
Mrs. Glover Jones. Yes. Ms. Wilfredo.
Yes, resolution is voted.
And Mrs. Enriquez Esteban. And I vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving to 3.05, the ESER 3 planning, Dr. Chris Kilbright and Mr. Dwight Lippert.
So board members Dwight and I are going to co-present on ESER 3. We had a focus group meeting this afternoon at 4 o'clock, a virtual meeting to get feedback on the initial draft of the plan. So we know, and you've heard the number of times the district vision and mission and the presentations to this point. Always the expectation around the equity statement and the connection is that we would treat everyone with dignity and respect by valuing individual perspectives and cultural diversity. And the way that we accomplish that aspect of the equity statement regarding the ESER plan, and we did have a focus group meeting with 19 people this afternoon at 4 o'clock to get feedback, input, and thoughts around the initial plan. And then also prioritizing interactions with every parent, student, guest, and colleague. I'll turn it over to Dwight for some background.
Thank you. So as everyone I hope knows, U.S. Congress has authorized 3 different economic stimulus during the COVID pandemic. So the third stimulus that we're talking about tonight is the American Rescue Plan that was signed into law in March of 2021. And for the third time, it includes funds for elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, or ESSER, for school districts across the country. So generally, the purpose of ESSER is to give funds to local school districts to help us address the impact that COVID-19 has had on us and continues to have on us. The funding enables districts to promote safe operations, and then this third ESSER 3 also is promoting equity-driven, sustainable, and evidence-based programs to address learning loss. So these are one-time funds. We have to use them by September of 2024, but we have to submit a plan for spending them by August 23rd. So that's the general background. So,
Can the plan be modified?
Go ahead.
Can the plan be modified?
Yes, yes, we will address that. So some of the main requirements on ESSER 3. First, you have to publish a safe return to in-person instruction, continuity of services plan by June 23rd, which record due complete. The application, again, is due August 23rd, which is your process. And then it's a requirement to develop the application and the plan in consultation with numerous stakeholders, students, families, administrators, teachers, principals, you can see other people, other groups, and then moving on. And to the extent that it is present in our district or served by our district, we again have to develop the application and plan in consultation with more groups, many of which we do have in our district, foster care, migratory, and underserved students. So, and then probably the most, the biggest requirement on this tax is at least 20% of the funds expended have to address learning loss of students due to missing school because of the pandemic. But we have to use evidence-based interventions. And the district has to ensure that those interventions respond to the student's academic, social, and emotional needs. Ensure the interventions address the disproportionate impact on underrepresented student subgroups. And then just for information, the funds can be expended on personnel or instructional resources. So we can continue to use that for personnel or all of those social and emotional positions that we've had over the semester too.
So to put this in context, the 20% amounts to just over $3 million. The total award for ESSER 3 is a little over 15 million. I think it's about 15.2 to be exact. So some other guidance that goes along with ESSER 3 is we're not able to reduce per pupil funding or FTE, which is people, a full position of staff for historically underserved groups of students. So this is an equity measure that is built in. So it's not a situation where we can build out our AP offerings or that we can funnel money into our dual credit, dual enrollment, because the unfortunate reality is a number of our students that are in underserved groups, we need to provide wraparound services for a lot of students so we can get them to the point where they can be successful in AP, dual credit, dual enrollment classes. The funds should be used to maintain and enhance existing plans that we already have in place in the district to the greatest degree possible. And then to the question that Ruth had, the thinking that we have, as well as the thinking in a lot of districts in Missouri, is this first timeline is quite tight. And so we need to get our draft plan submitted to DESE. We're not seeking board approval tonight because there would be no funds expended from this at this point. But we would be coming back to the board at least twice per year to give updates to the board. And when we do start expending funds, we'd be seeking board approval at that point. And then until September 30th of 2024, so 3 years from September 30th, we have to expend these funds. So we went out to the community to get feedback on where does the community and where do staff members, where do they prioritize, rank order the needs. Worked with Ms. Melly and Ms. Metz and with the NEA and helping to design the survey. This survey was also included the masking and social distancing questions. So it served two purposes: to get staff and community feedback around masking and social distancing, and then also to get feedback around priorities around ESSER 3. So we got 1,700 responses, and you can see the breakdown of staff and then parents and guardians. So just a little bit about the process. So the data were collected through a Google form. And then here are the 6 areas that were lifted directly from the DESE guidance, or the categories of ESSER 3. The first is responding to COVID. And then what are some examples of expenditures that would be responding to COVID? That could be the purchase of supplies, cleaning, sanitizing equipment, and air quality improvement. Addressing student learning loss, some examples of what that could look like: summer intervention, additional curriculums, after-school tutoring programs. Supports for underserved students disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. This could involve resources for low-income families, ELs, students who have an IEP. Increasing technology access. This could be devices. This could be hotspots. This could also be community-wide or municipal Wi-Fi. Addressing mental health needs. This could be programs, curriculums, could also be interventionists and people, could be therapists, and then upgrading and repairing facilities. You can see this could include HVAC, addressing student health needs, and so on. So the overall findings amongst staff and families, there was a level of agreement of the top or highest priority. Top priority was expending funds responding to COVID. Second priority was addressing learning loss of students. And then third in order would be responding to mental health needs of students. You can see how it broke down amongst staff. So what does it look like for staff who ranked items top 1 and 2? Mental health needs, addressing mental health needs was at the top. Learning loss and supports for underserved students were a close second. When it comes to our families, addressing learning loss, responding to COVID-19, and then you can see technology access and mental health needs were closely behind. There was a comment made earlier tonight around things being quite divided. I think this is always another example. People have different perspectives of what is needed and what is necessary at this point to serve students to the greatest degree. But there was some level of agreement that responding to COVID, addressing learning loss, in support of mental health needs of kids need to be included. So what we're looking at in terms of what the plan could look like is that responding to the 20% requirement that all funds be tied to interventions, could be academic interventions, could be social emotional support. We would be using the funds to maintain the additional academic interventionists. So if you remember, we added an additional academic interventionist, one at every one of our elementary schools, 6 total, to address K and 1 student needs, especially in reading. We added 25 total positions to our budget that were not there before. Out of those 25, there were 8 total teaching positions. The other 17 of those 25 were either academic or social emotional interventionists. And so where we are with our budget, we do require some additional budget support, meaning ESSER, to allow us to continue funding those positions. We do not want to get into a situation where we added about $2 million to our annual budget in terms of people, where the moment that ESSER drops off, that we're no longer able to fund those positions. New employee orientation started yesterday. We're off to a great start. We're bringing some high impact people into the district, and we want to make a long-term commitment to those people so that they can move the learning of kids and so that they can support the wellness of students. So using the funding to maintain those social emotional staff members, those include counselors, additional social workers, and art therapists that Ms. Pond and her team have onboarded, along with 2 bilingual therapists to support our Spanish-speaking families in the district. In addition, these funds can be used to purchase additional curriculums, as well as to cover the cost of training staff in the summer on additional intervention programs.
So the second part of our plan would be dealing with connectivity. And our vision would be district-wide Wi-Fi, basically a whole Wi-Fi net that would cover the district, provide internet access for all residents, all students, first of all families, but really would cover residents. So that everyone would have 24/7 access to stable, high-speed Wi-Fi, so they could access resources, course content, and interventions, as well as AMI, or alternative methods of instruction, which we use during weather. So it could do all that. The Wi-Fi would ensure that 100% of our families and students are supported, and really the whole district would be a wired community. It addresses several pieces in the ESSER requirements, talking about underserved students, talking about what happens during a long-term closure. We have a lot of hotspots that people needed. This would eliminate the control. It will be a significant amount, but not the largest.
Another area of funds and a part of the plan would be to provide temporary housing for students who are in transition. So students who are in transition, terms unhoused, homeless, we have a responsibility to serve students that do not have a fixed and adequate shelter. District-wide, we have roughly 300 students that are in transition, and students have a right to be transported back to the school or district that they attended when they lost their fixed housing. So on a yearly basis, we spend roughly $750,000 transporting students who are in transition to or from their current residence back to Ritenour. The McKinney-Vento federal mandate says that the lack of a fixed adequate housing should not be an obstacle to a student continuing their education. So we transport a number of students from Ritenour back to North County to the city. One situation sticks out in my mind from about 4 or 5 years ago, where there was a student that we were transporting to DeSoto, Missouri, each day. So providing temporary housing for students would potentially reduce the cost that we're spending on cabs, but more importantly, would put students in a stable position at Husky Support Center. So Husky Support Center is being built out. The grand opening of Husky Support Center is going to be on the 28th of August. We target the second floor of the Husky Support Center. So we purchased Overland Baptist Church, so the sanctuary is the current food pantry. And then there was a parochial school that was attached also. That's part of the property that was purchased. So the second floor, moving from classrooms to dorm rooms, that would allow us to provide housing for secondary students, a limited number of secondary students during the week. And then on the weekends, they can return with their family where they are currently residing. Now, some models that we're looking at to make this a reality. The first is the Harlem Children's Zone. Jeffrey Canada has done a whole lot of work in Harlem, and they've identified, they created an opportunity zone where cradle to college, there are resources that are being put in place to not only serve the student, but to serve the whole family, to eliminate obstacles. There are other models that are much closer to home. Joe's Place in Maplewood and then Hope House in Jennings are some examples of eliminating the obstacle that's created by not having a fixed adequate residence. The other rationale for why we believe to be in this best interest of students is that if students are residing in this location, they would have access to the food pantry, they'll have access to the Husky Health Center, they'll have access to the transportation department. The question about the van came up earlier for transportation. This would require that students would be monitored by house parents or room parents who would be Ritenour staff members, and there are models for how that can be made to happen. So we'd be accomplishing a couple of things. Number one, providing a stable environment for students during the week to keep the focus on learning, and then number two, defraying the cost over time that we're spending on paying for cabs for students to travel all across the region.
And our last part of the plan would be to improve indoor air quality. That's specifically an allowable item to respond to COVID. That would be replacing, modernizing, or enhancing our district heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, HVAC systems. Even more than what we've done already, and in addition to what we plan on doing with PrepEx, where it could free up some of those funds. As well, for instance, we need to replace a pipe behind Ritenour High School that burst a few years ago, and we replaced the pipe coming in, but we did not replace the pipe going out there. So that could free up some funds if we use that. If we use ESSER 3 for HVAC, but it would definitely improve indoor air quality. Also allowed is replacement or window and door repairs and replacement. Again, trying to improve the indoor air quality.
So these four categories were discussed with a focus group this afternoon. This committee that came together, those 19 people, will be the ESSER committee that will meet on a quarterly basis as we, if the board supports, start to flesh out this plan to a greater extent. So our our next steps is we would need to get a draft uploaded by August 23rd. Again, at that point, no funds would be expended, and then we would be working to flesh out in further detail each of the aspects of the ESSER 3 plan.
Were there any other projects brought up, any other things looked at to improve interchange?
So there was conversation about schools, right? So school buildings. So Mr. Lindhorst attended a conference in Jefferson City or Columbia. Sorry. So it was the DESI Cooperative Conference. It bounces back and forth. So, some initial thoughts were, are we at a point where we would look at a second school for early childhood, knowing that the more that we invest in early learning, the more it's going to pay off the dividends down the road. So in the initial guidance, Dr. Thomas and I talked a little bit about, it doesn't say that you can't create a new school with these funds, because this is significant funding. But at this conference, Mr. Lindhorst, want to share the feedback?
Well, so the conference, like, talked about a lot of things. The webinar that I attended this morning said the U.S. Department of Ed has already given them guidance that they do not want people building new schools. The other thing, the overriding thing is you have to be able to justify that it's really open. I think, personally, I think it'd be a stretch to try to figure out how building a new early childhood was a result of the COVID pandemic. So those are the two. That's the guidance I received this morning.
And so other projects too, I think a lot of districts are talking about putting the vast majority of this money into HVAC and air quality. In this district, we do have some funds for PropVest, $9.5 million that we're planning on putting into HVAC. So I just thought this allowed us to do some pretty innovative things in line with certain others.
The 19 members, they're not just school. Who are they?
I can get the list to the board. There were parents that attended, there were school people. Parents, yeah. So I can get the list to the board of who attended, who's on the project.
And then you have a breakout between Spanish and the English of the 5896 that went out. But what was, who responded, but what was the breakout between 5896? How many were Spanish speaking? Understand what I'm asking?
Of these that were sent out in English and Spanish.
Right.
Oh,
Because I think that's important to know that. And how did we send it out? How did we send the survey out?
Email and text messages.
Emails and text.
To district things.
I think it's important because we only have 138, but maybe maybe that was a bigger percent of the 5896 than the 1143.
So my assumption.
Understand what I'm looking at?
Sure. My assumption, and I will confirm before I respond to one of the officers.
Sure.
Is that when we put out these surveys, we put it out to every school family. So the number of Spanish-speaking families at this point, generally, a little over 20% are Spanish-speaking families. So then, if you assume, if you take that assumption of 20%, that's about 1,100 or so. So out of 1,100 Spanish-speaking families, and we would have got 130 responses. But
I think it's important that because we're sending out a whole lot more than that. We're only getting a small response. We need to find out why we're getting a small response compared to the English speaking.
On the one category or slide there you had, you mentioned that we had 300 kids in transition. Is that transition or is that homeless or using those?
those terms can be used interchangeably. In transition.
So they're with their parents, but they're homeless.
So it's a variety of situations. So it can be families that are potentially doubled up with another family. It could be families that are living in shelters. It could be any variety of situations.
They could be living in hotels.
It's not a. What's the term?
We also have unaccompanied students who are living.
What is it?
Couch
Stable.
Fixed and adequate.
Fixed adequate regular.
So the one in Makeover Richmond Heights, they're just the kids that live in that house with adult supervision, but not families.
Correct. And that's what, that's
And
to
what
be after
that's
some
what
of
we-
the students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question the one category about 20% for evidence-based interventions to address students learning loss. Is there any conversation surrounding specific opportunities? We don't have to act programs, but it's a specific like tutoring opportunities, so that's before or after.
Yeah, so the next step will be, bringing the people that are closest to it to try to flesh that out. We just, at this point, what we've accomplished is the 4 bucket areas. Then it would be bringing people to the table to really put a fine point on exactly.
So much. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Sounds good. Policy BDFA, conflict of interest, financial disclosure, due diligence.
So board members, on a yearly basis, every board member in the state of Missouri is accountable, or every board is accountable for readopting the Ethics Commission policy around conflict of interest in financial disclosure. About 4 or 5 years ago, we moved this from a consent agenda item to an open session item. So I'll just take a couple of moments to read off items of the policy, and then if you choose, then the board would move to reapprove policy BDFA. Members of the Board of Education must comply with conflict of interest laws and avoid situations where their decisions or actions in their capacity as board members conflict with the mission of the district. So as it relates to employment, I'm not going to read every aspect of this policy, but I'll just jump through. As it relates to employment, the district will not employ members of the Ritenour board, nor accept applications of employment from board members, consider board members for employment, or decide to employ board members while they remain on the board. Board members may provide services on a volunteer basis. As it relates to businesses that employ board members, a board member may participate in discussions and vote on motions for the district to do business with entities that employ the board member, as long as business is not owned by the board member and the board member will not receive any financial benefit from the transaction. The board member may need to submit a statement of interest as described below. There's a section on self-dealing that is outlined in 6 components in the policy. There's a section on the use of confidential information. Board members should not use nor disclose confidential information obtained in the course of or by reason of their official capacities in any manner with the intent to result in financial gain for themselves, their spouses, dependent children in their custody, any business with which the board member is associated, or any other person. There's also a statement around nepotism. Board members are not permitted to vote to employ or appoint any person who is related to them within the 4th degree of consanguinity or affinity. In the event that an individual is recommended for employment or appointment, and the individual is related within the 4th degree to a board member, the related board member shall abstain from voting and may leave the room during consideration of the question in the vote, unless the motion is part of a consent agenda and there is no discussion, in which case the member need not leave the room, but will refrain from voting. There are a number of other aspects in the policy BBFA. The policy has not been revised since August 13th of 2020. So as you consider readoption tonight, just note that the policy has not been modified from the last time that you approved.
Move we readopt policy BBFA, conflict of interest and financial disclosure as required.
Second. Mr. McGinnis, Mrs. Belvecco? Yes. Mrs. Weber Jones? Yes. Mr. Gardner? Yes. Mrs. Lawrence? Yes. Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion passes. On to 3.07, second reading, policy ACA sexual harassment under Title IX.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening. Good evening.
As we spoke about in the work session, policy ACA sexual harassment under Title IX, fairly extensive new policy recommended by MSBA. I'm just going to highlight some key points for you, and then I'll respond to any questions, comments you may have. And again, this is reiterating and highlighting some key points that we also discussed in the first reading. Again, the policy was created by MSBA in response to new regulations issued by the U.S. Department of Education, interpreting Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, the federal law commonly known as Title IX. These protections apply to both employees and students. While Title IX is more popularly known for expanding athletic opportunities for female students, U.S. Supreme Court has found that public school districts violate Title IX if they are deliberately indifferent to known acts of sexual harassment in the district's programs and activities. The Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Ed therefore has issued new regulations in 2020 that prohibit school districts from disciplining an employee or student accused of sexual harassment prior to the completion of a detailed grievance process. A few things you should know about this policy that sexual harassment has been identified as a growing concern in education. 48% of U.S. students are subject to sexual harassment or assault at school before they graduate from high school. Studies by the Department of Ed. This policy applies only to the most extreme types of sexual harassment. That means that harassment needs to be so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it deprives victims of their opportunity to access the district's educational benefit. That is a high standard that is meant only if the behavior is extreme, such as sexual assault, or so repetitive that it materially impacts access to education. There's a change in policy for Title IX that identifies what actual knowledge is for the district. The regulation clarifies this issue by defining the term that to meet notice of sexual harassment or allegation of sexual harassment to the district's Title IX coordinator, any official of the district who has authority to institute corrective measures on behalf of the district, or, and this is the key change, any employee of the district who has knowledge of sexual harassment, therefore represents the district, and the district is responsible for acting. Any person who falls into one of these categories needs to immediately report to the Title IX coordinator any allegations of sexual harassment or any circumstances that appear to be sexual harassment. This policy also protects and applies to retaliation. So regulation not only prohibits sexual harassment and discrimination on the basis of sex, but also retaliation against anyone for participating in the Title IX process. The district again must designate a Title IX coordinator and refer to the designated person as the Title IX coordinator. Also, many different people must be involved in processing a complaint. We spoke about this in the first reading. So the regulation identifies that there must be a coordinator that is trained, and training is ongoing, as well as investigators that are trained, decision makers that are trained, which are different people than the investigator, and the appeals, whoever would hear the appeal also has training. The is also a significant change. And supportive measures should be provided to both the complainant and the respondent during the process to ensure that educational opportunities are still in place and are not negatively impacting either party during the investigation. There is a component that allows for emergency removal and administrative leave as possible in extreme cases when deemed necessary. Also wanted to point out that either party now has the right to an advisor present during the investigation. And informal resolutions are allowed if both parties consent. And though that consent can be retracted at any point during the process if it's not moving in the direction that is in agreement with both parties. That informal agreement does not apply to an employee accused of sexual harassment students. That is not an option. These regulations, as we mentioned in the first reading, are controversial. There are court cases that have already been filed and in process, and we do expect changes to the regulations as those court proceedings conclude. Finally, the regulations also require a grievance process that is a reasonable timeline. So the timelines within the policy are those recommended by MSBA. They did give some latitude, but they also provided recommendations. I'm open to any questions you may have. Regarding Title IX policy.
I noticed that here, says the person is speaking, I noticed that you covered all that discussion last week, so that was my concern.
We did begin with initial investigator training for all of our school administrators and district administrators, knowing that that could be a possibility at any time. We also know that you can't just train somebody one time, that's it. So we assured anyone that would be investigating that we would be, as a coordinator, guiding that process all along. The policy also allows for someone else to be named to assist coordinating, and that is designated in the policy as the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, or as Han, who knows student support systems and the student concerns very closely. So that's another layer of support in our student claims.
Mike, you said MSBA wrote this?
MSBA did write this policy.
Did, I don't know, is it our process to send it to our own lawyers and have them look over?
We did that as well.
Did they make any changes?
They did not. They recommended going with the MSBA policy with this one. They have provided us with training modules that I started last year. And as the coordinator, I attended the training for each of those categories: the coordinator, the investigator, the EOs, and the decision maker. So we've been supported, and that was provided by Tooth Team. We've been supported with this effort tremendously. In this case, they recommend policy and MSBA.
Training says staff are having a lot of questions about it, or
I think they identified, so far we have had face-to-face conversations with all of our administrators. So lots of questions, lots of agreement that this is a concern that needs to be addressed if it occurs. But again, lots of questions and lots of what ifs. And in some cases, what about, describe a scenario. So there is a scenario that I'm working through with an administrator that happened recently, right at the end of the school year, just to go through the process and go through that as well. So lots of what ifs, what about these scenarios. Each of the principals is having a conversation with their staff, and their staff, every staff member in the district is getting training through an online module this year as part of our policy review, and our Safe Schools has provided video with assessment of understanding our does include our substitutes.
Yes, it sounds like we got a pretty good start to it. It just, it's one of those many things we just have to be so diligent about. We got one chance to get this right, make sure that we take care of the kids that we're charged to protect, to teach, and everything. So it sounds like we're at a good beginning.
Also to take care of our staff too.
All the staff, everybody is here.
Yeah.
Yes, and there are requirements within the policy for notice, so there will be additions to the district webpage. On every page, it will also link to more information about Title IX sexual harassment. And we're also be adding that to the student handbook, the course catalog, and we're looking at making links within the Tyler portal that parents and students would see. That is also recommended by our attorneys.
Oh, that's good. That's great. Madam President, I'd like to move the adoption of policy ACA, sexual harassment under Title IX, as read and presented to this board this night.
Okay. Dr. Thomas.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Long. Yes. Mr. Garden. Yes. Ms. Glover Jones. Yes. Ms. Belkrick. Yes. Ms. Enriquez Msba. And I vote yes. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, 3.0A, personnel recommendations.
Board members, I'm here tonight to present items 1 through 24 for your consideration for approval and open to any questions you may have. Number 24, we actually have an assistant principal at one of our buildings that will be on leave until late October. I'll be assisting in that capacity, as well as a large group of new teachers at middle school. So providing some support for evaluative feedback for teachers at middle school. Yes, as a substitute. There's also been some conversation about we tend to have in the spring a large group of applicants that we put through a screening to assist with some of that screening.
Then I have number 7 through 11. What's the reason for all the separation?
So 7 through 11, these had come to you earlier, and to be honest, it was a timing and communication timing. So they were proposed as coaches if we moved forward, and then later we found out that they had changed their mind for various reasons, mainly family reasons, and in conversation with Drew works to identify, respond to any concerns they had, identify the reasons, and then Drew's working through identifying replacements for those. I will say that in one case, family, if someone has identified that they really intend this just to be 1 year. Most of these are based on specific family or personal health reasons. They intend to come back after working through this.
Will we accept 1 through 24 as presented?
Second. Mrs. Enriquez Msba. Ms. Belkrick. Yes. Ms. Glover Jones. Yes. Mr. Garden. Yes. Ms. Owens. Yes. Dr. Thomas.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. 3.09, board member comments.
Surprise, surprise, right? Attended the new teachers event this week, breakfast and the next day for the panel that was held. And kudos to Evelyn, she did a great job. It was very interesting. It was good to hear what the students had to say. It was very, very good. Also, kudos to our new board member for giving just sending out the link for the legislative hearing. I did listen to that through the whole thing and took about 8 pages of notes, which I intend to type up and send to all of you. I believe we need to have discussion about what was shared during that. So thank you for that.
I do have one thing. I would just like to extend an additional thank you to Mr. Eaton. I know that you are putting a lot of work into the color run and also helping with the special school district and everything. So I just want to thank you for your dedication to it.
You know, in watching the news every night, you know, the local news focuses on several larger school districts in our area that are more affluent than we are. And their troubles and tribulations about everything from staff members, teachers, bus drivers. And they're scrambling to figure out how to fill 50, 60 teacher positions, bus driver positions, and whatnot. And in watching and looking at our personnel report tonight, listening to our Department of Transportation and everything, you know, again, you look at our school district and we're a nice quiet group that sit here, and because of the culture that has been built by our superintendent and his staff, attract these people. We attract people to come here because they want to be here. You know, we've had a lot of people leave to go to, you know, like Rockwood's Lafayette High School, and they soon find out that's not where they want to be. And they're straining to figure out how to start school with a lot less staff members in positions. And I just take my head off to Michael Chance for doing those hard things, finding people and putting them in the right place. And it's good to know that when we start school that, I don't know, we might not have 100%, but you know, the 1 or 2 places that are left vacant are a heck of a lot better to take in than the 50, 60 at other school districts or hundreds. So I really appreciate what you've done all the summer and bringing us the best people that we can find that want to be here with our kids everywhere.
I'll just say it's a team effort, and really every staff member in the district contributes to that.
So to you and your staff, sir, that's why we can sleep better at night.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? We'll move to our report consent agenda. A motion to approve consent agenda items 4.01 through 4.09 as presented.
Second. Yes.
Ms. Thomas? Yes. Mr. Garner? Yes. Ms. Clifford Jones? Ms. Pilker? Sure. Ms. Enriquez? And I'm a yes. On to closed session 5.01 to reconvene in closed session. And that we reconvene in closed session per state statute 610-021 for the purpose of discussion of personnel agenda items.
Second.
Dr. Thomas?
Yes.